open up for questions. The briefing is on behalf
of it's very good to see you all, and as you know, I have been in DC for the last 2 days, and the primary purpose of my visit was to attend the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. And I obviously, in addition to the meeting itself, I met bilaterally with my counterparts, Secretary Rubio, Foreign Minister Penny Wong, and Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya. I also had separate meetings with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and with the Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, yesterday. So let me start with the Quad, because as I said, that was the main purpose. Now, the meeting which we had was a much longer and a much more detailed one than we had in January, which actually happened to be the first day that Secretary Rubio had taken office. And all the Quad ministers, I think we all agreed strongly that our goal in the Quad was to strengthen strategic stability in the Indo-Pacific. And this meeting, the discussions were largely devoted to enhancing delivery on various initiatives and projects. As is the practice on such occasions, we had a very open, very freewheeling discussion on regional issues of the Indo-Pacific. A lot of that was a granular analysis of different situations, different issues of the Indo-Pacific itself. But again, in the light of recent developments, it is natural that we also spend some time discussing the Israel-Iran conflict, also what the U.S. had done in Iran. Now, while our meeting was taking place, there was in parallel a Quad business roundtable on critical minerals, and there were companies from all the 4 Quad countries which were present at that roundtable. Now, in terms of Quad, I mean, of course, in its current incarnation, it's been there since 2017. It has grown steadily. All of you are aware of it. But I just want to flag some recent developments, because people often ask, saying, okay, how is it deepening? How is it progressing? So let me highlight some of them. One, we launched the Quad Critical Minerals Initiative, and this would be focused particularly on the mineral recovery, which is very important for all of us. Second, there's the Quad Indo-Pacific Logistics Network. That was launched earlier in the year, and we decided it will hold its field training exercise, first field training exercise, fairly soon. It had held its tabletop exercise in May. Then there is the Quad at Sea Ship Observer Mission. This involves our Coast Guards, and that's recently launched from Palau to Guam. So we recognize that as an important step in Coast Guard cooperation. Then there is a maritime legal dialogue at the expert level, which will be held in India, right?
It's virtual, sir.
It's virtual, okay, later this month. Then we took some steps to expand the Indo-Pacific Partnership on Maritime Domain Awareness through our Gurugram Fusion Center. Also a Maitri workshop, which will allow us to assess capability gaps and build maritime capacity. There will be a Quad Ports of the Future Partnership Conference, which will focus on resilient ports and shipbuilding. And of course, a Quad partnership on cable connectivity and resilience. It will hold a conference on undersea cables. So as you can see, I mean, the Quad members are all, fundamentally maritime nations. A lot of what brings us together, the Indo-Pacific, is the maritime facet of our capabilities, and most of what you can see as steps of advancement are in the maritime area. Now, from this meeting, if I have 3 or 4 takeaways, I would say one, quite clearly, because as I said, this was a really detailed Quad meeting we were doing under Trump 2.0 administration. There was a very clear affirmation of the deepening commitment of all members to the Quad. Second, this goal of strategic stability that I spoke about, obviously it's expressed through various initiatives and cooperative endeavors. And what that essentially means is we are discussing how do we build our own capabilities and those of others through cooperation, and how do we mitigate vulnerabilities. That if there are vulnerabilities of various kinds for various nations, over-dependence or reliance, over-reliance in a way, then what is it we can do with each other to address those gaps and make that less of a problem. The Quad architecture has been, because Quad has grown in the last 8 years in a sort of very organic fashion. So every time there's a meeting, there are new ideas, something is set up, there's a discussion, some project is done, some new cooperation is started. So the feeling was, look, it's got a bit messy, so let's streamline it into 4 clear streams. And those 4 clear streams were maritime and transnational security, economic prosperity and security, critical and emerging technologies, and humanitarian assistance and I think emergency response. We also expect to hold the Quad Summit in India later this year. And we had a useful discussion about preparing for that. There was, we tabled some ideas, so did others. We had a discussion. Obviously, those ideas have to take form before I'm in a position to share that with you. So that was, the sum and substance of what happened on the Quad side. In terms of my bilateral meetings, I had a good session with Secretary Rubio. And we essentially did a stock taking of the last 6 months and, what do we do to go, look ahead. And this included a discussion on trade and investment, on technology, on defense and security, on energy, and on mobility. Now, defense and energy are 2 subjects where, particularly with the US, I think they're substantive enough to warrant a separate meeting with their secretaries, which is why I had a meeting with Secretary Hexet and with Secretary Pratt. I also had very useful conversations with my other 2 counterparts, Penny Wong of Australia and Takeshi Iwaya of Japan. In both cases, obviously, whatever are the particular bilateral issues in those relationships were the subject of our discussions. We talked about visits which were due on either side, preparing for the meetings of our Prime Minister, which are also impending. So overall, I would say, for me, it was a very productive day yesterday, and in terms of the evolution of Quad, I think it was again a step forward. Not just, I would say, in terms of a sort of another meeting of the Quad, but in many ways it was a sort of a house cleaning and a way of making it more efficient. There was we were self-auditing ourselves and saying, okay, how do we deliver better? How do we make it more efficient? So that's the spirit really in which we approached this particular meeting. So that's what I had to share with you. I'd be very happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Please do introduce yourself before beginning.
Foreign Minister, thank you. Jaishankar with the Hindustan Times. So could you tell us a little bit about the substance of the Quad's discussions on the Pahalgam terrorist attacks as well as the operations include what was said to you by your counterparts from the other Quad ministers?
Well, we had you saw that it was something which I spoke about publicly in my remarks. It's also reflected in the joint statement of the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. And essentially, I mean, with each of my counterparts, I had shared with them this sense that look, the nature of the terrorist challenge, the fact that we have confronted it really over multiple decades, and that we are very resolved today to respond to it very firmly, and that we have the right to defend ourselves. I think that's something which not just Quad partners, but I think many other countries. I was in Europe. You had a lot of countries recognizing that. But what is important for us in the Quad statement, as also the statement which the Security Council had issued on April 25, is that the perpetrators of terrorism must be held accountable. They must be brought to justice. And that's important because we then have to communicate to the world that what we did during, on 7th May, the objective of Operation Sindoor is that if there are attacks, if there are terrorist attacks, we will act against the perpetrators, the supporters, the financiers, the enablers. So that message, I think, was conveyed with great clarity.
Minister Saurabh Shukla, I represent News Mobile. I also represent Prasad Bharati and Consulting Editor Republic TV. Minister, Prime Minister Narendra Modi took a bold step post Pahalgam and etched a new strategic doctrine of India. There are reports even now that there are Pakistan-based terror groups which are continuing to plot terror attacks against India. There are groups which are active, which are openly seen, the leaders openly. What happens if there is another terror attack on India which is directed from Pakistan or financed by Pakistan?
Look, nobody is going to answer that in the hypothetical manner in which you posed it. I think what we have to what we have communicated very clearly is we mean it when we say there is zero tolerance for terrorism. Now, and we also, if you look back at Prime Minister's address to the nation after the cessation of firing on 10th of May, there were some very clear messages which came out of that. So it's really for the terrorist groupings and for their sponsors to absorb and to reflect on those messages. Now, I don't think we are going to spell out if this happens, we will do that. I mean, no government does that.
Thanks, Neil. Good to have you back in DC. Jaishankar from the University. My question is again on Pakistan. I refer to your bilateral with Secretary Rubio. Did U.S. insistence on having played a role in ending the conflict, did that come up? I mean,
No.
The President has continued to claim credit for it. The must track of counter how many times he's done that. And did that come up? I mean, because there has been some irritation from our side, India's side.
No, that issue did not come up.
Thank you for.
It's working.
Hello.
It's working? Yeah. Thank you, Foreign Minister. This is Vishnu from South Asian Herald. How do you assess the overall impact of the recent armed party delegations that returned to India? And have they contributed meaningfully in shaping global consensus on India's policy on zero tolerance and to defend its people against terrorism? And the second one regarding Quad, you mentioned yesterday that Quad has made substantial progress in areas such as maritime cooperation, logistics, education, and political coordination. Are there still any outstanding issues or concerns that India is currently discussing with its Quad partners ahead of the New Delhi summit? Thank you.
Well, I have spoken about the all-party delegations in India, and let me again reaffirm that we have, we very much value and appreciate what they did. I think when I look at the engagements they had, the conversations, the the impact that they had. It's, it's very good for a country. It really serves our national interest. When you have a broad-based set of people who speak with one voice abroad, it conveys a strong message of national unity. It underlines a certain seriousness about responding to terrorism. As a democracy, I think it does, in many ways, does credit to us that you have leaders. I mean, whether you talk of Shashi Tharoor or whether you talk of Supriya Sule or Kanimari Ji, or I can give you the list, or indeed leaders from the ruling party, Ravishankar Prasad Ji or Jay Panda, Sanjay Jha, who's part of the NDA coalition, or Shinde. Look, all of them, and again, if you look at the members, you had a diversity of people, and you had many people again who have some earlier association with foreign affairs. Salman Khurshid, Anand Sharma, people like Ghulam Nabi Azad, who are well known in many ways. So what it did, and you had some ambassadors as well, former ambassadors. So if you look at the entirety of that initiative, I think when you had a set of people with a track record, with that diversity, you actually saw the political pluralism of India come together on an important issue and send a strong unified message. And I think that was something really great, and it's something which, I mean, quite apart from being a minister, honestly, as a person, as a Indian citizen, I applaud that. On the Quad issue, look, what happened, the way Quad has worked, we started, it's a very, in some ways, a unique organization. It doesn't have a legal, formal framework. It is not, there's no document that countries signed up to. So what has happened from the start is we met, it was very comfortable, there was a certain commonality of purpose, there was a common ground which we were covering, there was a convergence of interests which drove us. And every time we have met, and in between meetings, our officials keep talking to each other, we have built up an agenda. And so when you ask me, if you've done this, what remains to be done? Well, there's a universe of things remaining to be done, because it is not like there's a limit. It's not like we have 10 tasks and we have done 5. I think the more we develop the Quad, many more possibilities really would open up. And sometimes the possibilities would reflect the need of the day. I would say 5 years ago, maybe undersea cables was not such a big deal. Today it is. Critical minerals was not in people's lexicon. It now is very dominant. So issues will pop up. New priorities will emerge. Sometimes old ones which were not addressed will also be looked at. So in that sense, I mean, in a good way, you make it up as you go along. You are very open-ended. We welcome any suggestion which any member has, or even which somebody else may give us, and build up an agenda on that basis. And that's the way we've actually built up the Quad, and I'm sure that's the way we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Reena Bhardwaj, JNI. The Quad members also expressed concern about the South China Sea. I'm wondering if you have anything to add on or share something on in terms of the conversations. And the U.S. also plans 500% tariffs on import of Russian oil. I'm wondering if there were any discussions.
You're talking of the Senator Graham's.
Right. So if there are any discussions on that front too.
Well, on South China Sea, we had there was some discussion, because, as you know, that is an issue of great concern, not just to Quad members, obviously to Quad members because we are all maritime, but to the region and in many ways to the world as a whole. And a lot of the issue is really issues pertaining to UNCLOS, and there's been a tribunal verdict there, and the issue is to find a sort of a solution to the disputes which are there pertaining to that. And obviously the Quad members all have a shared interest, because for us it's a very important international waterway. So how to ensure that it stays calm and free of conflict is something which is a common priority. Regarding Senator Lindsey Graham's bill, well, obviously, any development, but which is happening in the U.S. Congress is of interest to us if it impacts our interest or could impact our interest. So we have been in touch with Senator Graham. The embassy, the ambassador has been in touch. I think our concerns and our interests on energy security have been made conversant to him. So we'll then have to cross that bridge when we come to it, if we come to it.
So thank you for doing this all. As you have mentioned during this bilateral meeting with your U.S. counterpart, you have discussed so many wide range of topics. Do you see during any upcoming meetings as an opportunity for the India and the U.S. to discuss initiatives around seasonal labor mobility for India to U.S.? As we see the significant contribution of the Indian and Sikh community in the sectors like agriculture, transportation, retail, and hospitality. It will be win-win situation for both the countries.
I note that you have that point of view, but I would say on my visit, obviously that specific issue did not come up. But I did raise the question of more efficient and smooth issue of visas, because I think that is a public concern in India. And as a minister, I obviously reflect the concerns of my country when I come to the United States. So I did raise that issue. But on the particular aspect that you mentioned, no, that did not come up for discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Anil Kakarkar from Pudari newspaper and Pudari TV News from India. Sir, can you elaborate on India's approach to balancing its strategic partnership within the Quad while maintaining its independence foreign policy stance, especially with the summit being hosted in India this year?
Well, I don't see any contradiction there, so the question for me of balancing it doesn't arise. I mean, Quad is, to my mind, a platform, a grouping that actually reaffirms our strategic autonomy. I mean, what does that mean at the end of the day? It means we are a independent power, a large, independent, increasingly influential country, a growing economy. We have our interests. We want the right to make decisions based on our own judgment and our own interests. And definitely for us, membership of Quad serves that purpose. It is an expression of that very concept.
No.
Seema Siruri, Economic Times. Mr. Minister,
Yes, on. We can.
Given the military cooperation between China and Pakistan seen during the recent confrontation, is India more open to giving Quad more of a security dimension, like a little harder edge, as some have argued? Would India be more open? Because people say India is a little shy about that. The other question is about the 3 Quad members having various kinds of problems with the 4th, that is the US, Australia is under review with AUKUS, and Japan has been asked to do, more defense spending. They cancelled their 2+2 dialogue. India has a host of political issues that came up in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. How did that play out in your meetings? Does that cast a shadow? And one last chota question on China. We don't know where the Trump policy is going on China. If Quad's main purpose is to sort of create an alternative and prevent hegemony by China in Asia, how are we supposed to understand what's happening right now?
So let me reflect on what you are saying. You are saying on the one hand, people among the Quad, there are issues among the partners, and then you are saying, so therefore, are you going to do more with the United States, though you have more problems? Seems to, the way you put it, which I don't agree with. So just you may want to reflect on that. So here's my point. Look, first of all, anything which happens between China and Pakistan, I don't see that as frankly shaping our Quad decision making. You talk about people say a lot of things. It's a free world, almost. I can only say what is our thinking, which is that for us, Quad serves a purpose, that by working with these three partners, we actually advance our national interests and a collective good in the Indo-Pacific. As I said, we strengthen strategic stability in the Indo-Pacific. So when you speak about, issues between countries, you mentioned US and China. Well, I think if we are strengthening strategic stability in the Indo-Pacific, that in some ways perhaps even, deals with the concern that you have. So, look, in a world which is more uncertain, which is more volatile, more unpredictable, anything which is a factor of stability, predictability, anything which adds to the stable side of the ledger, I think is welcome. And Quad is very much a platform that contributes to that. Whether among the Quad partners there are issues or not, when you have relationships, what happens between the rest of them is not my business, it's for them. I can only speak for myself. When you have big relationships with countries, the relationships will not be free of issues. I think the strength of a relationship is not its freedom from problems. It is the ability to address those problems and then keep that trend going positively. And I would, definitely make the case with the United States that has been so, that over successive administrations, and it's not like we've not had problems with the earlier ones, but we have been constantly able to address those issues and move forward. So the answer to uncertain, predictable world is not to, say, okay, so you should tie yourself closely to this policy or to that country or take a knee-jerk response one way or the other. That's not the way strategic decisions are made.
Good afternoon, Minister. Two questions. Given India's growing role as a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific, how does the Quad envisage strengthening the regional security architecture in ways that complement ASEAN's centrality while reinforcing international law, particularly UN Convention on the Law of the Sea? And secondly, India has emphasized the importance of elevating the voice of the Global South within global governance frameworks. In what ways did the recent Quad discussions integrate this perspective, especially in terms of equitable infrastructure development and humanitarian assistance mechanisms?
On the first question, I would say we spent a certain amount of time discussing ASEAN, its centrality, its interests, etc. And the Quad has always been very respectful of the ASEAN. I mean, you have to appreciate that in many ways ASEAN provides a great sort of strategic contribution to the global system, because it has created platforms where very, very diverse countries. I mean, if you look at the East Asia Summit attendance of various bodies, you get really countries which would normally not be in the same place at the same time coming for those meetings. So I think that value of the ASEAN is something we appreciate as Quad, definitely, I would say even as India. We very much, in all our discussions and activities as Quad, when we look at the Indo-Pacific, for us, ASEAN centrality is very much in mind. Regarding Global South, yes, of the 4 Quad members, we are the only one who's from Global South. But the Indo-Pacific itself has nations of the Global South. So a lot of our discussions, we are in many ways able to convey the sentiments and the thinking of the Global South. I mean, because we are from it, perhaps much more effectively than others who are not from it. But one of the issues which we did discuss was actually development projects, which mostly we do by each one of us doing nationally, but we compare notes on it. And many of those do pertain to the Global South.
So, Rohit Sharma, India Today. So first thing, obviously in the mind of a lot of people, what was your initial response at MEA and at Prime Minister's office when President Trump announced ceasefire? Did you immediately reach out to express your disagreement, and how was that taken by the White House? 2 years ago, second question, 2 years ago I asked you in one of these briefings, and you noted that Pakistan was no longer a central piece to bilateral relationship between India and the US. Has that changed now after the Operation Sindhu? And third, do you believe there is a double standard when it comes to terrorism, when it happens in countries like India versus the West? Do you think Western countries see it differently, terrorism happening on their shores versus when it happens abroad? Thank you.
Look, I would say that even today, the central factor in the relationship between India and the United States is India and the United States. It is our complementarity in many ways. It is the benefits that we get from closer relationship that is actually driving it. It is not, big relationships are not forged in terms of third countries and where they fit. So the comment I made to you earlier, I would say applies even today. That if I am talking about the when I am looking at the future of our ties with the United States, or if I even look back at the progress in our ties with the United States over the last 20 years, I would put it to you, a lot of it is, it's about trade, it is about investment, it is about technology, it is about mobility, it is about energy, it is about defense. So I would really urge you to get over the idea that we need to define ourselves vis-a-vis third countries in order to forge ahead somewhere. That is not the case. We are a big country. We are, among the top 5 economies of the world. We are the most populous country in the world. Our influence is growing. We must have that self-confidence, even in asking questions. I think the record of what happened at that time was very clear. The ceasefire was something which was negotiated between the DGMOs of the 2 countries. So I will leave it at that. And on the terrorism issue, again, look, it is a fact that countries, often countries do not take a position when some other country is a victim of terrorism, which they would do when they themselves are. We have, in that respect, honestly been much more consistent and principled. That we have, when terrorist incidents, attacks happen elsewhere, outside India, we have largely followed the same position that we have taken when they have happened in India. So, if is your point that others not doing it, my answer to you is yes, you are right. Many of them are not doing it or not doing it sufficiently enough. And part of diplomacy is to exhort them, encourage them, persuade them, motivate them to do that. And which is why it's important to speak up, and which is why it's important to carry them with us to the best possible degree.
Thank you, everyone. That's all the time we have today.